Okay guys, today we are working on F5 performance management exam. So the purpose of this video is again a strategy for the exam, and also I want you to be able to answer some of the questions maybe easier than you're able to do now. So maybe I answer some questions in easier way then you would answer it. So as you already know, there are three sections in F5 exams. We have section A, section B, and section C. In section A we have 15 questions. Each question is 2 marks, so that makes it total 30 marks. Then we have section B, where we have 3 questions. Inside those 3 questions we have 5 questions, and each question is worth 2 marks. So 3 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 2, 30 marks total. So if you only answer section A and section B, you will be able to pass the F5 exam. But obviously I don't recommend that. And section A and section B needs specific answer, so it is going to be selected by computer, and you don't have to wait for the result because of section A and section B. It is section C where you have to wait 1 month for the result to be known. If there wasn't any section C in the exam, then the result would be shown on the spot. So whatever strategy you use, whatever strategy works best for you, I recommend that. Like one strategy would be starting from section C and then working through section A and B. And another strategy is just simply starting from section A and working all the way to section C. Both of these strategies have advantages and disadvantages. The benefit of working on section C first would be that because initially you will be fresh, you will not be under pressure, so you will be able to answer it with more focus. But the benefit of answering it later is that because section C is where you need more explanation and you need more detailed answer, not any specific answer, so you need to give it appropriate time. So what you could also do is finish section A and section B and then move to section C. You can spend as much time as you want. And naturally, the more time you spend on it, the more clear and beautiful your answer is going to be. That is going to be my approach for now as well. So we will start with section A and then work all the way to section C. Okay, first question, using activity-based costing, what is the budgeted overhead cost per unit of product D? Remember, activity-based costing is alternative of absorption costing. A company manufactures 2 products, C and D, for which the following information is available. We have the units and the labor hours, number of production runs required, number of inspections during the production, total production setup cost, inspection cost, and overheads. So we have 3 costs here. So that means we would need 3 activities on which to divide these costs. So we have the production setup cost, which obviously you can link to the production runs, and then we have inspection, which you can link to the number of inspections, and then you have other overheads. We could use labor hours here. just like we do in absorption costing. So I didn't use units because you might remember from your early studies in absorption costing, we give preference to hours rather than units. So instead of dividing it on units, I'm going to divide it on hours. And also because hours is an activity. So let's start with the question. So we have total 140,000 production cost divided by 28, which becomes 5,000 cost per production run. So I'm going to note that. So we have 5,000 per production run, or 5,000 per run. Then we have the inspection, which is 80,000 divided by 8. That gives us 10,000 per inspection. And then we have 96,000 divided by hours, 48,000. That gives us 2 per hour. So they are asking about product D, I believe. Yeah, it is product D. So we don't need this information. We have found the cost per activity. Now we have to see how much activity is used by product D. So we have cost of production setup, which is 5,000 per run, and each 4,000 units of D. Every 4,000 units of D requires 15 production runs. So one way of answering this is to take 5,000 multiplied by 15, which will give you total production runs, divided by 4,000, which will give you 18.75 per unit. And then the same thing with inspection. We can take 10,000 cost per inspection multiplied by inspections, which are 3, divided by 4,000 units, which will become 7.5 per unit. And then labor hours, we have 2 per labor hour multiplied by 10 labor hours required, which would be 20 per unit. So when we combine all costs, which is 18.75 plus 7.50 plus 20, it becomes 46.25, which is our answer here. So move forward. Remember, don't spend too much time on it, because you have other things to work on. If you're stuck in a question and you're not able to understand it, just skip it, go to another question, because it will affect how you answer other questions, and it will mentally disturb you. You will have exam pressure. So any question that seems difficult, just skip it. You can flag it here if you want to come back to the question. Okay, what is the target cost for each unit of product X to 2 decimal places? The selling price of product X is set at a 550 for each unit, so that is our target selling price, and sales for coming year are expected to be 800 units. So a return of 30% on investment of 500 in product X will be required in the coming year. So what is the target cost for each unit of product X? Remember, target cost is target selling price minus target profit. Target selling price is given here. Target profit we have to find. They told us that we want 30% return on investment. Our investment is 500,000. Multiplying that by 30% would mean 150,000 total profit we want to make. We have 800 units that we want to sell. So if we take that and divide it by 800 units, that becomes 187 profit. So if we want to earn 187 profit and our cost is 550, that would give us 362.5 cost per unit. Remember, we spent more time on the previous question, and you might be thinking if every question we spend that much time, then we will not have enough time for the whole exam. But the fact is that some questions will take more time than other questions. I have seen in many places where they tell you that you have to spend a certain minutes on each question. That's not a good approach, because some questions will require more focus than other. Some questions can be answered in half minute or 1 minute. Some questions will take 5 minutes. So it is important to do the whole exam in that time, not any particular questions, especially these small questions. So you saw the previous question had many things going on, so obviously it would take more time than this question. And they said here to 2 decimal place, which means we have to write 0.50. Remember, always focus on these things, because you might know the question, you might know the answer, but because of a small mistake like this, your answer will be wrong. I nearly missed it as well. So yeah, we have exact 362.5. Yeah. If only product P were to be made, how many units would need to be sold in order to achieve a profit of 60,000 each year to nearest unit? So you can see they're asking for a target profit. So I would expect it to be a break-even question. So remember, in break-even type of question, we look at the fixed cost and divide it by contribution per unit, which tells us in how many units we will do break even. And then in this question we have the target profit as well. We just add that with the fixed cost and divide it by contribution per unit, and it will be our answer. But I haven't read the question. Pico makes 2 products, P1 and 2. The budgeted details for each product are as follows. We have selling price 10 and 8, cost per unit, we have direct material, direct labor, variable overheads, fixed, and profit per unit. Budgeted production and sales for the year ended 30th November, we have P1 and then product P2. The fixed overheads costs included in P1 relate to apportionment of general overheads costs only. However, P2 also includes specific fixed overheads totaling 2,500. Remember, whenever we are making decision, fixed costs are usually not relevant. But when fixed costs are incremental, affected by our decisions, then they become relevant, which in this case, we have 2 types of fixed cost. One is general fixed cost, another is apportioned. The general would not be relevant because that is not affected by our decision, but the specific 2,500 cost would be relevant. If we don't make product P, the recommendation here is that if we make product P1 only, if we make product P1 only, that means we are not incurring the 2,500 fixed cost, which is related to this other product. Okay, so we have to find the contribution per unit and divide fixed cost divided by the contribution plus adding that profit that we want to achieve. We don't want to just cover costs, we want to be able to make profit as well. Okay, so let's find total fixed costs, and from which we will remove this 2,500. So total fixed cost is not given, units per unit is given. We can take the cost per unit, multiply by total number of units, which will give us total cost. Like 10,000 multiplied by 1.20 will give us 12,000, and then 12,500 multiplied by 1 will give you 12,500. So 12,500 plus 12,000, we have 24,500. Minusing the specific fixed cost, we have 22,000 fixed cost. Now take that 22,000 plus the target cost profit we want to achieve, which is 60,000 in this case. We have 82,000 total contribution we want to achieve. If we achieve 82,000 contribution, what will happen is we will cover the fixed costs as well, and we will be able to make profit as well. So 82,000 divided by contribution. Contribution can be calculated in two ways. One way is to take sales minus variable cost. That is the long way. But the easiest thing to do is take profit plus fixed cost. Because what is contribution? Contribution is profit before fixed cost. And what is profit? Profit is contribution after fixed cost. So if we take profit, add back the contribution, add back the fixed cost, it will give us contribution per unit, which will be the quickest way of finding contribution. So we have 3.20 here, which is profit per unit. If I add back the fixed cost of 1.20, that would make it 4.40. So take 82,000 divided by 4.40, that would give us 18,636 units. And they said here in the requirement to nearest whole unit, which means in this case it is 18,636 exact units. 18,636. Okay, which two of the following statements regarding environmental costing, cost accounting are true? The majority of environmental costs are already captured with the typical organization's cost accounting system. The difficulty lies in identifying them. Input-output analysis. Now, when you see a theoretical question, instead of reading one and then focusing on it, it's better to read all the requirements. Once you read all the requirements, it will be easier to decide which one is right and which one is wrong. So my recommendation is always read the full requirement. Second option, input-output analysis divides material flows with an organization in three categories: material flow, system flow, and delivery and disposal flows. One of the cost categories used in environmental activity-based costing is environment-driven cost, which is used for costs which can be directly traced into a cost center. Environmental life cycle costing enables environmental costs from a design stage of product right to decommissioning at the end of its life to be considered. Now, in these type of questions, more than one answer, like in this case, they ask two requirements. Sometimes more than two might be correct, but some of them would be more correct than the others. Some will always be correct and some sometimes correct. So when you look at all the options, then you will be able to decide which one to choose. Like in this case, the first one and the last one is correct. As you might know from the environmental chapter, you might have studied there that we included environmental costing in our system, but we haven't specifically identified them. And then environmental life cycle costing, you can understand from the name as well. It relates to environmental cost of the product from the development stage until the withdrawal of the product. Okay, based on above information, which of the following statements is true? So this is a numerical question, it's a drop-down question, so we have to select an answer. But even there is no calculation required here, but we still have to, because it's variance analysis, we have to know how much is favorable or adverse. We need to calculate it. To produce 19 liters of product X, a standard input mix of 8 liters of chemical A and 12 liters of chemical B is required. Chemical A has a standard cost of 20 per liter and chemical B has a standard cost of 25 per liter. During September, the actual results showed that 1850 liters of product X were produced using total input of 900 liters of chemical A and 1100 liters of chemical B. The actual costs of chemical chemical A and B were at the standard cost of 20 and 25 liter respectively. Let's see what is the requirement. Both variances were adverse. Both variances were favorable. Total mix variance was adverse and yield variance was favorable. Total mix variance was favorable and total yield variance was adverse. So they're asking us to calculate mix and yield variance, which is a sub part of the volume variance. Remember, volume variance is divided into mix and yield variance. Mix variance is when the proportion of the material is different than the standard proportion. If you use expensive material more, it would be adverse. If you use cheap material more, it would be favorable. And then yield is the overall efficiency, overall output achieved from the material used. So let's calculate the variances now. Okay, so we are calculating mix and yield variance. Let's read the question again. To produce 19 liters of X, a standard mix of 8 and 12 is required. This is our standard mix. And then the prices are given here. During September, the actual results showed that 1850 liters of X were produced using total input of 900 liters of chemical A and 1100 liters of chemical B. So first, let's look at mix variance. Mix variance looks at whether we use expensive mix or cheaper mix. Like if we have used more of material B, A, then it would be favorable. If we have used more of material B, then it would be adverse. So we have 1850 liters made. If we had used standard mix, we would have used 8 liters, which would be 14,800 liters. Sorry, every 19 liters requires. So divide by 19, for 1850 divided by 19 multiplied by 8 gives us 778.9 liters would have been used if we had followed the standards. So and according to actual, A is used more, so that seems like it is favorable. I don't have to calculate because they haven't asked the value. Remember, if you understand the meaning of formulas, then you don't have to completely answer the question. So you can clearly see that I would have used 778 material A, but I have used I should have used 778 material A, but I've used 900 liters. I've used more A because A is cheaper. That would suggest a favorable mix variance. So I'm not going to multiply by the price and stuff because it's not important. So 1850 divided by yeah, if you multiply by the price, it will give you value, but they haven't asked about value. They only said whether it is favorable or whether it's adverse. So answer smart. Divide by 19, multiply by 12. If I had used B, I would have used 1168, which is more, but I've actually used less. So clearly you can see that mix variance is favorable. So if that is the case, then this could be a correct answer, and this could be the correct answer. A and C can be eliminated because here the mix is adverse, but in actual results, mix is favorable. So either this or this could be the answer. We'll look at the yield variance, and then we will be able to know whether which one is correct. So let's look at yield variance. We have 1850 liters again, divided by 19 multiplied by 8, which will give us total liters, which would give us 778.9 liters, make it 780. I'll write it here so that I don't forget it. 780. And then for B part, 1850 divided by 19 multiplied by 12, which would be 1168. So 1168. The previous one was 780. This one is 1168. Previous 778, I believe. Let's double check. 1850 divided by 19 multiplied by 8. 778. Or we could make it 9. So if we add it together, 779 plus 1168, we have 1947 total quantity. But so 779 plus 1168 total we should have used, but we actually used 900 liters of one and 1100 liters of another. So we have used more. That would give us adverse. Okay, remember the calculation I did are specific to this question. If they asked the figure, I would have calculated differently. Okay, so mix was favorable. If they asked the figure, I would have taken the total quantity here and then multiplied by the mix to give exact value. But they didn't ask about exact value. They just said whether it is favorable or whether it's adverse. So mix is favorable, yield is adverse. Next, budget is a quantified plan of action for a forthcoming period. Budgets can be prepared using a variety of different approaches. Match each of the following statement to the correct budgeting process. Okay, we have drop down, beyond budgeting, incremental budgeting, activity-based budgeting, rolling budget, flexible budget, zero-based budget. Builds in previous problems and efficiency. Remember, this is related to flexible budget. I will bring the things, and then if I change my mind, I can adjust it. So remember, incremental budgeting. It brings previous deficiencies as well. Recognizes different cost behavior patterns. That would be flexible budget because we look at fixed variable, semi-variable costs. Focuses employees on avoiding wasteful expenditure. That would be zero-based budgeting because we start with zero. We remove the previous inefficiencies. Focuses on controlling the causes of cost. Cause of cost, remember, relates to activity-based costing. Yeah, so it would be very relevant here. So you can find that one word which would match it to the requirement. Always extends the budget 1 year into the future. Remember, rolling budget. Uses adaptive management process. Remember, beyond budgeting concept says that you shouldn't always rely on budgets. In some situations, you have to go above budget, beyond budget. So you use adaptive management processes. Means we don't have to be strict, we need to be flexible. Using information below, identify by clicking on the relevant branch of the decision tree which action the company should take. A leisure company owns a number of large health and fitness resorts, but one is suffering from declining sales and is predicted to make a loss in the next year. As a result, management have identified a number of possible actions. Shut down the resort and sell off the assets. Undertake a major upgrade to facility costing 4.5 million. Undertake a minor upgrade to facility costing 2 million. The upgrades are predicted to have variable results, and profitability of good results after major upgrade is 0.80, whereas the probability of good results after minor upgrade is 0.70. The company is risk neutral as in prepare the following decision tree. Remember, expected value is average, and average is used by neutral. So we need to make one of the decision. We have to click one of the branches, which is shut down and sell. 3 decisions, major upgrade and minor upgrade. So whichever gives us the highest return, whichever gives you the highest expected value, you will go with that decision. Remember, we start calculation from right to left. Okay, so one is shut down and sell. The value of which is given here, which is 5.75 million. And we have other information here as well. The upgrades are predicted to have a variable results, and probability of good results after major upgrade here is 0.80, where the probability of good result after minor upgrade is 70. So this one doesn't have any probabilities. This is exact one figure, which is 5.75 million. We don't have to calculate it. So this is the value, no problem here. Let's look at the value of this one. It is said here that the results, the probability of good results after major upgrade is 80%. So good has 80% chance. What is remaining is poor. So we have 2 things. Remember, the equal of all probability should be 1 or 100%. If good is 80%, that means poor would be 20%. So let's see. If we have 11 million and multiply that by 80%, it will give us 8.80. I always forget figures, so I'll write it here. 8.80. And the poor has probability of 20%. So 7.5 multiplied by 0.20, which is 1.50 plus 1.50. So total becomes, I always check figures with calculation. I don't trust myself with calculation. So 1.5 becomes 10.30. This is the value of major upgrade. But remember, we haven't yet minus the cost of upgrade, which would be 4.5 million. Yeah, 4.5 million. So minus 4.5, that becomes 5.80. Which is more than shutdown. If we were comparing major upgrade and shutdown, we would have chosen major upgrade. Let's come to the minor. They said the probability of good result after minor upgrade is 70. It means this is 70% and this is 30%. So 9 million multiplied by 0.70 becomes 6.30. You could just put it in bracket like 9 million multiplied by 0.70 plus 6 million multiplied by 0.30, so which will become 8.1 minus 2, even though it has less result, but if you look at the cost that we are spending on it is not that much, so it gives us 6.1. So that means we go with the minor upgrade. Okay, even though the return it has is less. You can see here we have 11, here we have 9, and this one has 80% chance, this one only 70. But the money we are spending on it is more in the major upgrade. So the overall return is higher with minor upgrade. Okay, rank the product in order they should be manufactured, assuming that the company wants to maximize profit in the next 4 weeks. A company has the following production planned for the next 4 weeks. The figures reflect the full capacity level of operations. Planned output is equal to the maximum demand per product. So we have selling price, raw material, direct labor, variable has fixed profit, planned output. Direct labor hours per unit. It has been identified that labor hours available in the next 4 weeks will be limited to 4,000 hours. So they have asked us to rank the product, which one should be made first. They haven't asked us how much each quantity should be made. That would be extra effort. Only ranking is asked here, so which is not that difficult. We just look at the contribution per limiting factor, which means taking contribution and dividing it by the time, which is labor time in this case. So again, the quickest way to calculate contributions is to take profit and divide it by take profit and add back the fixed cost. So here we have the 46. Let me write that here. We have 30 plus 16 would become 46. For product A. 10 plus 42 plus 10 would become 52 for product B. And 13 plus 8 will become 21 for product C. And 12 plus 48 would become 60 for product D. If we only look at the contribution per unit, we would choose D, then B, then A, and then C. But we don't look at contribution per unit, we look at contribution per limiting factor. So now we take this figure and we divide it by labor hours. So we have 46 divided by 6 hours, which gives us 7.66. Next one, 52 contribution divided by 8 hours, 6.50. Next, 21 contribution divided by 3 hours, it becomes 7. And then we have 60 divided by 2, which is 30. So sometimes when question is too simple, just check that there isn't any trick that they might have used. So, but for now, ranking would be first, second, third, and fourth. I hope I'm not missing anything. So we will take D and we will put it to the first one. We will take A, make it the second one, make C the third one, and then B the last one. This would be the ranking. I hope I haven't missed anything. Okay. Match the correct value for money performance category for each of the following targets for DEFCO. DEFCO provides accounting services to government departments. On average, each staff member works 6 chargeable hours per day, with the rest of their working day being spent on non-chargeable administrative work. One of the company's main objectives is to produce high level of quality on customer satisfaction. DEFCO has set its targets for the next year. So we have to link each of these with the 3 E's. Remember, economy, efficiency, effectiveness. Remember, economy, whenever there's talk of money, that is economy. Wherever there's talk of input and output, that is efficiency. And whenever we are looking at the overall purpose of the thing, we look at the effectiveness. So increasing number of chargeable hours handled by advisors to 6.20. So my initial guess is this efficiency, because we are looking at input and output, the hours versus the work. Obtaining a score of 4.70 or above on customer satisfaction survey. So remember, overall performance satisfaction, that would be economy in my opinion, and then cutting department expenditure by 5% would relate to economy. Different type of information system provide information which organization need for strategic planning, management, and operational control. Match the following characteristics to relevant information systems. With management information system, transaction processing system, executive information system, enterprise resource planning system. Okay, we have summarized internal data into reports, can be used with external links to customers and suppliers. Utilizes dashboard, facilities interactive graphs, facilitates the immediate processing of data. So you can see the word processing is used here, so I would write that here. Transaction processing system. Dashboard, facility interactive graphs, so that would be more in exact, I will put it here, but then let's see. Can be set up with external links to customers and suppliers. Remember, enterprise resource planning system. So if we link ourselves with customers and suppliers, we will be able to link planned resources accurately. Summarizes internal data into periodic reports. Remember, periodic reports would be something that would relate to management information rather than executive information system. So my guess is that this is right. Which two of the following are examples of direct data capture costs? Remember, direct data capture is one is processing data, one is capturing data. So if directly data is captured, like in barcodes and stuff like that, we call that direct data capture. So we're not talking about processing, we're not talking about any reports, we're only talking about capturing the data. So use of barcode in scanners, completion of timesheet by employees, payroll department processing time of personnel costs. Obviously this will not be the answer because not capturing. Input of data into the production system, emails sent to staff on matters that do not relate to them. So data, remember, one thing here would be use of barcode, and they said two things: completion of timesheet by employees. So when employees prepare timesheets, that would be another example out of these other options given, an example of direct data capture. Payroll department processing and then input of data into the production system. We are inputting it, so it's not direct capture. Email sent to the staff on matters. Which of the following statements regarding life cycle costing are correct? It can be applied. See, you can see that on some of the questions I spend more time. Obviously, one reason was I was explaining, but even still, some questions will take less time. So the time that you spend, the more time that you spend on one question will be saved by other questions that don't need a lot of effort. So don't worry if you spend a little bit time on a question. Okay, that approach of dividing minutes on question is not very practical. Okay, so the best thing is to do the whole exam in that part. Or what you could do is instead of looking at the time per question, you could look at the time per section. Like on section A, because it is 30 marks, you would be spending 30% of your time here, which would be roughly about 1 hour or something. Which of the following statements regarding life cycle costing are correct? It can be applied not only to the products but also an organization's customers. Often between 70 to 90% of costs are determined early in the product life cycle. It includes any opportunity costs associated with production. The maturity phase is characterized by rapid buildup in demand. Remember, rapid buildup in demand is the growth stage, not the maturity stage. Maturity stage is when we have reached the highest potential. It can be applied not only to the products but also to the organization customer as well. Remember, we have customer lifecycle costing as well, customer lifecycle as well, which basically means that you have to make effort so that your customer stays with you for a longer period. And often between 70 to, so this is wrong actually. What I meant was it was wrong. So the first one is correct. Often between 70 to 90% of costs are determined early in the production life cycle cost. You might have seen this in many places, that about 70% or 90% of the cost are identified. It is actually mentioned in BVP book as well. So I would select this one. What is throughput accounting ratio? Remember, throughput accounting ratio is throughput per limiting factor divided by fixed cost per limiting factor. A company manufactures a product which requires 4 hours per unit of machine time. Machine time is a bottleneck resource, as there are only 10 machines which are available for 12 hours per day, 5 days per week. The product has a selling price of $130 per unit, direct material cost of $50 per unit, labor cost of $40 per unit, and factory overheads of $20 per unit. These costs are based on weekly production sales of 150 units. So one way of answering throughput accounting question is to find total cost divided by total hours, or and total contribution divided by total hours, or you could find per unit data, whichever is feasible will give you exact same answer. Okay, so let's see, we have a company manufactures a product which requires 4 hours per unit of machine time. So this is machine time. I would expect this to be a bottleneck, and we saw that it was a bottleneck. Machine time is a bottleneck resource, as there are only 10 machines available for 12 hours per day, 5 days per week. So which will give us total machine time. If we take four machines available, 10 machines available at 12 hours per day, 5 days per week, and we are calculating per week, so we have 600 hours roughly. Remember, if you're not giving remote exam, it is, instead of using Scratchpad, you can do this on piece of paper. It would be more faster. The product has selling price of $130 per unit and direct material cost of $50. So $130 minus $50 is your throughput contribution. So $130 minus $50, which is $80. Throughput contribution. Labor cost per unit, we don't care about that. And factory overheads are 20 per unit. These costs are based on weekly production and sales of 150. Okay. So we have 80 contribution divided by 4 hours, because we require 4 hours per unit, which gives us 20. So let's write that 20 TP per limiting factor. We have to find factory cost per limiting factor as well. So we have selling price of 130, labor cost is given 40 per unit. So we don't even have to make this total because it's already given per unit. So we could just add it together, this one. So your approach depends on question, how information is given. So you don't have to calculate total and divide. It's already per unit. So it would be 60 divided by 4, which would be 15. So this is our fixed cost for TFO per limiting factor. So now when we take 20 divided by 15, it becomes 1.33, which is our TA ratio. Remember, when TA ratio is more than 1, the product is profitable. If it is less than 1, it's loss making. Next, if division B accepts Coleco's offer, what will be the impact on profits per year for the group as a whole? Oxco has total divisions, 2 divisions, A and B. Division A makes a component for air conditioning unit, which it can sell to division B. It has no other outlet for sales, so it only makes, division A only makes things for division B. It doesn't sell it outside. Current information relating to division A is as follows. We have marginal cost per unit 100, transfer price of the component, which is 165, total production and sales of the component each year are 2200, specific fixed cost of division A per year, which means that if we don't have division A, this cost would be saved. Normally, remember, as I said, fixed costs are not relevant, but in this case, they're relevant. So we have specific cost of division A per year, 10,000. Colco has offered to sell the component to division B for 140 per unit. If division B accepts the offer, division A will be closed. Remember, when we are calculating the profit of the whole organization, then it doesn't matter how much we are selling it internally, because it doesn't change the profit of the whole group. What matters when we are calculating profit of the whole group is what is the variable or fixed cost that the division is incurring. So that transfer price would only be considered when we are calculating individual departments' profit. But if we are looking at the improvement in profit of the organization as a whole, we only look at the variable cost of making the product and any fixed cost that would be saved if the division doesn't exist. Okay, we have 100 marginal cost for total 2200 units. That would be 220,000 plus 10,000 cost that is going to be saved, which means total 230,000 is the cost that we are incurring. So let's write that here so we don't forget it. 230,000, and then our external supplier is offering at 140. So 140 multiplied by 2200 units, which would be 308,000. Yeah, so 140, and our existing was 230. So 308,000 minus 230,000 becomes 78,000. We will be losing because the external supplier is offering it is expensive. Identify by clicking on relevant box in the table below whether each of the statements regarding Fitzgerald and Moore's building blocks model is true or false. Okay, the determinants of performance are quality, innovation, resource utilization, and completeness. Standards are targets for performance and should be fair, achievable, and controllable. Rewards encourage staff to work toward the standards and should be clear, motivating, and controllable. It is a performance measurement framework suitable for service organizations. Okay. So some of them are very specific. They are easily understood. Like one thing, we have controllable here and controllable here. So it is in both, so it should be true in one place. So let's read. Standards are targets for performance and should be fair and achievable and controllable. Remember, targets should be fair and achievable. Controllable is relating to rewards. So when we have rewards, we should be able to control the rewards. So other than the controllable part, this one is true, but it's false because it has that control. Even if one element, even if one word is wrong in whole sentence, the sentence becomes wrong. Rewards encourages staff to work towards standards and should be clear, motivating, and controllable. Yeah, as I previously said, it comes here. So rewards should be clear. Employees should know what the rewards are, motivating. They should be something that they want, and they should controllable. It basically means they should be able to achieve it. It is a performance measurement framework suitable for service organizations. Yes. And then determinant of performance is quality, innovation, resource utilization, and competitiveness. It is quality, innovation, and resource utilization, not competitiveness. So first two would be false and the last two will be true. Okay, next is section B. Remember, we have three questions here. scenario based, and each question has 5 questions, each worth 2 marks. So 3 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 2 equals 30 marks. So remember, some of the questions here will be theoretical, so if you don't have time, you could just answer that and skip others, like we have here about 2-3 theoretical questions. But if you have time, just work normally from the start. But always look at the requirement first. That will prepare you for what you're about to see. So what is the annual capacity of bottleneck activity? The salon has calculated the cost per hour to be 42. Calculate the throughput accounting ratio. Which 3 of the following activities could the salon use to improve the TPAR? And what would be the effect on bottleneck if the salon employed other senior stylists? Which of the following statements regarding theory of constraints are correct? Okay, let's skim this information quickly. Remember, you will not be able to catch all information at once, but slowly all information will come to you. And in scenario-based questions, remember, focus on one question at a time. Read all the information, and then whatever is required in each of the questions, just focus on that. Because focusing on all things together will be very difficult. So one step at a time. Glamco is a dressing salon which provides both cuts and treatments to clients. All cuts and treatments in the salon are carried out by one of the salon's 3 senior stylists. The salon also has 2 assistants and 2 junior stylists. Every client attending the salon is seen first by assistant who washes their hair, next by senior stylist who cuts or treats their hair depending on which service the client wants. Then finally a junior stylist who dries their hair. The average length of time spent with each member of staff is as follows: with assistant, senior stylist, junior stylist, and the salon is open for 8 hours each day for 6 days per week. It is only closed for 2 weeks each year. Staff salaries are $40,000 each year for each senior stylist, $28,000 for junior, and $12,000 assistant. Cost of cleaning products applied when washing clients' hair is $1.50 per client. The cost of all additional costs applied during a treatment is $7.40. Other salon costs, excluding labor and raw materials, amount to $106,400 each year. Glamco charges $60 for each cut and $110 for each treatment. The senior stylist time has been correctly identified as bottleneck. So this is our bottleneck activity. So requirement of the first question: what is the annual capacity of bottleneck activity? Which means how many total units we can perform. They have asked treatments and cuts. So they said at the top that we have 3 senior stylists who work 8 hours every day. We have 6 days every week, and we have 2 weeks off. There are 52 weeks every year, so 2 weeks off would mean 50 weeks. So that means we have 7,200 total hours available. Let me write that here. Maybe it is important. Another requirement. So this is our senior time. Let's calculate the others' time as well. Maybe we need it. We have junior. So everything else is the same. 8 multiplied by 6 multiplied by 50, but there are 2. Or what we could have simply done, 7,200 divided by 3 employees multiplied by 2 employees. Simple as that. So this is junior and then assistant, same. So the time of assistant and the time of junior stylist is the same. Okay, so if we take the time, which is 7,200, divided by time taken, which is 1 hour, we have 7,200 hours here and 7,200 cuts. If we take that and divide it by 1.50, we have 4,800 cuts. So we have 4,800 treatments and 7,200 cuts. C is the answer here. The salon has calculated the cost per hour to be 42.56. Calculate throughput accounting ratio TPAR for both services to 2 decimal places. So remember, TPAR is throughput accounting ratio, which is throughput per limiting factor divided by fixed cost per limiting factor. Fixed cost per limiting factor or overheads per limiting factor is given. So we only have to find contribution. So they said here, cut can be sold for 60, and the material that we use, because labor is not included in contribution, throughput contribution, cost of cleaning products applied when washing the hair is 1.50 per client. The cost of all additional products applied during a treatment is 7.40 per client. As you can see here, the process is that every client attending the salon is seen first by a salon assistant who washes the hair, next by senior stylist who cuts or treats their hair. So whether you are coming for the cuts or treatments, hair will be washed, and the cost of the material will be $1.50. Obviously, if you are cutting your hair, there will not be any additional cost. If you are treating your hair, there will be 7.40 additional cost. So the cost throughput of cut is 60 minus 1.50, the cost of material. If I divide that by 42.56, it will give me throughput account ratio, which is 1.37. And they said up to 2 decimal places. So up to 2 decimal places it will be 1.37. Yes. And treatments, 110 minus the cost of washing, because in treatment as well there is washing, and minus the additional material as well, which is 101.10. But because it uses 1.5 hours, I'm going to divide it by 1.5. So now divided by 42.56, which becomes 1.58 if we round it off. Okay. So remember, throughput accounting ratio is throughput per unit divided by fixed cost per unit. And remember, 2 decimal places. So always focus on that. And remember, when throughput accounting ratio is more than 1, that suggests that the product is profit making. If it is less than 1, it means that the product is loss making. So in this case, both of these services are profit making, but if we want to see which one is making more profit, it would be treatments. Even though treatment uses most of our time, but it gives us but it still gives us more contribution per hour than the cuts. So if we were giving priority, we would give priority to treatments. Which 3 of the following account activities could the salon use to improve TPAR? Remember, TPAR ratio, to improve, whenever they tell you to improve a formula, a ratio, you have to first understand what the ratio is made of. Like they are asking us to show ways in which TPAR will be improved. Remember, in TPAR, in the top we have throughput per limiting factor, in the bottom we have fixed cost per limiting factor. So if the top becomes more and the bottom becomes less, in both ways it will improve. So the top is made of sales minus material cost. If sales increases and material cost decreases, or the contribution per unit decreases, and then the bottom is made of factory cost. If factory cost decreases, in all of these ways we will be able to improve. But they said which 3 of the following. So if we look at these options as well, it will come to our mind. Identify ways to reduce the material cost for the service. Yeah, this will improve the throughput. It will improve the throughput, which will improve throughput accounting ratio. Increase the time spent by the bottleneck activity in each service. I don't think so. Improve the control of salon's total operating expenses. Yes, maybe. Reducing the total cost. Increase the level of inventory preference. Stock out. Remember, we don't use inventory. Increase the productivity of stage prior to the bottleneck. Remember, if you want to increase, you need to increase bottleneck. Prior to bottleneck doesn't improve anything. Imply an increase to the selling price of the service. Yeah, this could also be correct. So all of these three seem correct answer. What would be the effect on the bottleneck if salon employed another senior stylist? If we employ another senior stylist, remember currently our staff is our hours are 7,200, so divide that by 3, employees multiply by 4 would become 9,600 hours. So if we add another stylist, what will happen? The senior stylist time will be bottleneck for cuts only. The senior stylist time will be bottleneck for treatments only. The senior stylist time will remain the bottleneck for both cuts and treatments. There will be no change, no longer be a bottleneck. Okay, let's see. If we want to see whether it still is a bottleneck or not, we have to compare it with assistants and junior stylists as well. So as we saw, we have junior stylists 48 hours. 48 hours divided by 0.60 would give us 8,000 cuts, and dividing by 0.50 will give us 9,600 treatments. So 9,600 and 8,000. What about assistant? 4,800 hours divided by 0.10, 48,000. And 4,800 divided by 0.30, which will become 16,000. So now let's see if this increases, it becomes 9,600 hours as we saw. How much can this perform? Let's divide by 3, multiply by 4. Yeah. So 9,600 divided by 1, obviously 9,600. So now you can see the bottleneck activity here is now junior stylist, because the capacity here has become more now. 9,600 divided by 1.50, 6,400. It is still bottleneck activity in treatment. So it has gone out of the bottleneck activity for cuts, but it's still bottleneck activity for treatment. The senior stylist time will be bottleneck activity for cuts only. No, it's not for cuts. Senior stylist time will be bottleneck for treatments only, yeah. Okay, which of the following statements regarding tuitive constraints are correct? It focuses on identifying stages of congestion in a process which, when production arrives, more quickly than the next stage can handle. It is based on concept that organization manage 3 key factors: throughput, operating expenses, and inventory. It uses a sequence of focusing steps to overcome single bottleneck, at which point the improvement process is complete. It can be applied to the management of all limiting factors, both internal and external, which can act as effect on organization. So which of the following statements are correct? Focusing on the top, it focuses on identifying stages of congestion in the process when production arrives more quickly than, yeah. Remember, one of the things we do in activity-based costing is we look at the limiting factor process, the process which has less capacity. So that means 1, 2, or 4 could be the answer. It is based on concept that organization manage 3 key factors: throughput, operating expenses, and inventory. As we saw in throughput accounting, these are the main things we talk about: the throughput, the operating expenses, and the inventory. We want to minimize the inventory, we want to minimize operating costs, we want to increase maximize throughput. So this is true. That means 1 or 2 could be the answer. It uses sequence of focusing steps to overcome a single bottleneck, at which point the improvement process is complete. So what this statement basically means is that once we find a bottleneck activity, we overcome that, we make it more, or maybe we use it more efficiently. After that, we stop, we don't improve. Remember, throughput accounting says that once you have improved something that is bottleneck activity, go back to step number 1. Maybe now another thing has become bottleneck, like we just saw here as well. When we increase the senior staff hours, then other hours became bottleneck. So because of which this would be wrong, and 1 and 2 would be correct. Section B. Remember, again, we have 5 questions within a question. Let's look at the requirement in relation to the luxury car seat. What is the cost of 8 units? What was the actual rate of learning, which occurred to 2 decimal places? In relation to the new design of high chair, which 3 of the following statements could explain why the actual rate of learning differed from the rate which was expected? Identify by clicking on the table below whether each of the statements regarding cost plus pricing is true or false. Using probabilistic budgeting, what is the expected budgeted contribution of this product to nearest whole dollar? Okay, in relation to the luxury car seat, what is the labor cost of the 8 unit? Let's read the question. Cherco has several new products in development. Information relating to 2 of these products is as follows. The estimated labor time for the first unit is 12 hours, but learning rate of 75% is expected to apply for the first 8 units produced. The cost of labor is 15 per hour. The cost of material and other variable overheads is expected to total 230 per unit. Cherco plans on pricing the seat by adding 50% markup to the total variable cost per unit, with the labor cost being based on incremental time taken to produce the 8 unit. High chair, another product which Cherco has in development, is new design of high chair for feeding young children. Based on previous experience of producing similar products, Cherco had assumed that a learning rate of 85% would apply to the manufacturing of this new design, but after first phase of production had been completed, management realized that a learning rate of 80% had been achieved. Cherco uses cost plus pricing when setting budgets for its products. Okay, they are asking for the cost of 8 unit, which means we have to find the time of the 8 unit. We could use 2 methods, algebraic method and tabular method. Tabular method, remember, is only used when output becomes double, which is the case here, but it cannot find the time for a specific unit, which is in this situation. So in this case, we can only use algebraic method to find the time for the 8 unit. In algebraic method, remember, we find the total time of 8 units and total time of 7 units, and when we minus one from the other, we will have the time for the 8 units, and multiplying by the cost will give us the cost. Okay, what I do first is, remember, the formula would be time for the first unit, which is 12, multiply by time for total units you want to find, which is 8, and 7. We will do calculation 2 times power log of r divided by log of 2. What I like to do is find log of r divided by log of 2 first. So 0.75 log divided by 2 log. Remember, the way this calculator works is that first you have to write the value, then click on the log sign. But in your scientific calculator, the physical ones, first you have to type log and then put the figure. So log of r divided by log of 2 is 0.415. I'm going to write it here. And remember, this is minus. Now we can put it in our formula, which is 12 multiplied by 8 power 12 multiplied by 8 power minus 0.415 becomes 5.62. When we multiply by 8, remember this is average time. When we multiply this by 8, it will give us total time. Okay, total time is 40.50 hours. I'm going to write it here. Now let's find the time for 7 units. We do the same thing, just replace 7 with 8. So bracket minus 0.415. Again, this is the time for average time for 7 units. Multiply by 7, it will give us total time, which is 37.4596. So 40.50 minus 37.4597 multiplied by 15 will give us the cost, which is 45.60. So the closest one is A. I would select that one. Next, what was the actual rate of learning which occurred to 2 decimal places? Again, for finding rate of learning, we could use algebraic method or tabular method, depending on information, you will know which method to use. The first phase of production has now been completed for the new car seat. The first unit actually took 12.5 hours to make, and total time for the first 8 units was 34.30 hours. At which point the learning effect came to an end. Cherco has are planning on adjusting the price to reflect the actual time it took to complete the 8 unit. So remember, the only thing they're asking is what is the rate of learning, because total 8 units time is given, which means the outputs are double. We could use the tabular method, which is the easiest one. Okay, using tabular method, remember the way it would work is that we would take 12.5 time multiply by rate of learning. Let's say if it was 75. For first unit, there will be no rate of learning, but for the second unit, there will be rate of learning. And then for third and fourth units, then we would use 0.75 power 2. And then for 8 units, because then it becomes double, double becomes 8, multiply by 0.75 power 3. But the thing is that rate of learning is not given in this question, so this 0.75 is the question mark. We are trying to find this. So everything else is the same, and this total time is also given, which is 34.30. So using this information given, we have to find the value of R. Okay. So we have 34.30, 12.5. That's okay. 34.30, 12.5, yeah. So what we can do is we can divide both sides by 8 so that 8 is removed. We have 34.30 divided by 8 becomes 4.2875 and equals 12.7, removing this point, multiply by R power 3. Okay, or we could say, you could rearrange it or you could leave it like that, it doesn't matter. So we could also divide both sides by 12.5, 4.2875 divided by 12.5 equals 12.5 multiplied by R power 3. So dividing by 12.5. So 4.2875 divided by 12.5 becomes 0.343. So that means equals R power 3. So if we put this figure in calculator, let's see if it works here. If it doesn't work here, I would have to do it in another calculator. So in your calculators, I don't believe it will work. Here you have 2, but we don't have 3. No, we don't have. We can use it here. So I will take a calculator here and find the value, and you could do the same thing. So let's see. So when I put this figure in calculator, R becomes 0.70. 0.70 would equal 70%. So the actual rate of learning is 70%. We could write that in the answer now. Now they said, what was the actual rate of learning which occurred to 2 decimal places? So remember, they're asking percentage. Don't write 0.70. So 70.00 up to 2 decimal places, they said. But it is exact 70. We still have to write 70.00. In relation to the new design of high chair, which 3 of the following statements could explain why the actual rate of learning differed from the rate which was expected? Now see, the actual rate of learning is 70%, and the estimated was 75%. Remember, the lower the percentage, the more it is. Think of it like discounted price. The more discount you have, the less you will be paying. So 70% rate of learning is more than 75%. So you have to know that. If you don't understand that, then your comments will be wrong. So actual rate of learning here is 70%, which is more than the budgeted. In relation to the new design of high chair, which 3 of the following statements could explain why the actual rate of learning differed from the rate which was expected? Remember, in this question here, in high chair, Chairco had assumed that a learning rate of 85% would apply to the manufacturing new design. But after the first phase of production had been completed, management realized that 80% learning had achieved. Again, in this situation, we have 80%, which is more learning than the standard. Staff levels were stable during the first manufacturing phase. That could be the reason why staff is not changing. It means they learn. When staff level changes a lot, it means learning is affected. There were machine breaks during the production. If there is machine breaks, that affects our learning. Assembly of chair was manual and very repetitive. This could be the reason. There was high staff turnover during the period. When there is high staff turnover, learning is affected. There were minimum stoppages in the production process. Yeah, when there is no stoppages, it means the labor is continuously working, then a learning effect would be higher. The design of chair was changed several times and at the early phase. If you change the design, the learning effect will become 0. So out of the 6 options, the first and the third and the 5th one is correct. Identify by clicking on the table below whether each of the following statements regarding cost plus pricing strategy is true or false. Marginal cost plus pricing is easier where there is readily available variable cost. Full cost pricing, remember, marginal cost plus pricing is the marginal cost of a product is variable cost of a product. So when we use marginal cost plus pricing, that means we are only using the variable cost of the product. So they said marginal cost plus pricing is easier where there is readily identifiable variable cost. Maybe full cost plus pricing requires the budgeted level of output to be determined at the outset. Remember, to find full cost plus pricing, it means we have to find the cost total units as well, because when we are using full cost plus pricing, we are using OIR, and when we are using OIR, it means we use budgeted data. The more accurately we budget the data, the more accurate will be our OIR. So this seems true. Cost plus pricing is a strategy-focused approach as it accounts for external factors. I don't think so. Remember, the alternative cost is alternative cost of cost plus alternative costing system of cost plus pricing is target costing. In target costing, we look at the external environment, not in cost plus pricing. So I don't think this is true. Cost plus pricing requires that profit markup applied by organization is fixed. Okay, the first one, marginal cost plus pricing is easier when there is readily identifiable variable cost. Yeah, every costing system is easier when information is readily available. Full cost plus pricing requires budgeted level of output to be determined at outputs outside. Yes, we need to know the total. Cost plus pricing is strategically focused approach as it accounts for external factors. No, it accounts for internal factors. Cost plus pricing requires that profit markup applied by organization is fixed. So if they want to say that when you find a markup, you can never change that, that is not true. Whenever you look at the market condition and you see you are charging more profit, you could reduce your profit. If you believe you are charging less profit, you can increase your profit. So it doesn't have to be a percentage that you will always use. You can keep changing that depending on what the expectation of the customers are. Okay, using probabilistic budgeting, what is the expected budgeted contribution of this product to nearest holder? Remember, probabilistic budgeting is when we prepare budget based on expected values, when there is no 100% output and we have different outputs with different probabilities, we find expected value that would be probabilistic budget. Chairco has also developed a new type of office chair, and management is trying to formulate a budget for these products. They have decided to match the production level to demand. However, demand for this chair is uncertain. Management have collected the following information. We have worst possible outcome, most likely, and best possible outcome. The selling price is 25. The variable cost per unit is 8 for any production level up to 25,000 units. If the production level is higher than 25,000 units, then the variable cost per unit will decrease by 10%, and this reduction will apply to all units produced at that level. Total fixed costs are estimated to be 75,000. Remember, they asked us budgeted contribution, not budgeted profit. So we would not include the fixed costs in it. So instead of taking the sales price multiplied by units and then variable cost multiplied by units, one minus the other, the easiest thing we could do is take contribution multiplied by their units, which is 25 minus 8, 17. So we have 10,000 multiplied by 17 becomes 170,000, but this has 30% chance of happening, so it will become 51,000. So we'll write that in scratch pad here, 51,000. Next, 17 multiplied by 22,000 multiplied by 0.50, which is 187,000. Plus, for this last activity, the variable cost changes. It said that there is 10% discount and it is applied to all units. If that is the case, the variable cost will become 8 multiplied by 0.90, 7.20. So 25 minus 7.20 becomes 17.80. So 35,000 multiplied by 17.80 becomes 623,000, and multiplied by 0.20 becomes 124,600. So 124,600. When we add all of them together, 51,000 plus 187,000 plus 124,600 becomes 362,600. Okay, let's look at another question. First requirement, What is the cost of fabric and wood which should be included in quotation? What cost should be included in quotation for skilled labor and semi-skilled labor? What is the cost which should be included in quotation for factory overheads? Which of the following statements describes treatment of general fixed overheads when preparing quotation? Which four of the following statements about relevant costing are true? Okay, the High Life Co. makes sofas. It has recently received a request from a customer to provide one-off order of sofas in excess of normal budget production. The order would need to be completed within 2 weeks. The following cost estimate has already been prepared. So we have fabric used, the value, wood and labor, skilled, semi-skilled, factory overheads, total production costs, and then general fixed cost, 20% of production costs. Total cost. A quotation now needs to be prepared on relevant cost basis so that High Life Co. can offer a competitive price as possible for the order. As competitive price as possible means competitive price means lower price. The fabric is regularly used by High Life Co. There are currently 300 square meters in inventory, which costs 17 per square meter. The current purchase price of fabric is 17.5 per square meter. The wood is regularly used by High Life Co. and usually costs 8.20 per square meter. However, the company's current supplier earliest delivery time for the wood is 3 weeks' time. An alternative supplier could deliver immediately, but they would charge 8.50 per square meter. High Life Co. has already has 500 square meters in inventory, but 480 square meters of this is needed to complete other existing customer orders in the next 2 weeks. The remaining 20 square meters is not going to be needed until 4 weeks' time. What is the cost of fabric and wood which should be included in quotation to nearest dollar? Okay, fabric and wood separately. Fabric is used regularly by High Life Co. Remember, when we use something regularly, the replacement cost is the relevant cost. So this is basically a relevant costing question. So because they said in the beginning that it is something that we regularly use, then replacement cost would be our relevant cost. They said there are 300 square meters inventory which costs 17.5, not relevant. The current price of the fabric is 17.5. Whatever, because we are regularly using, if we use it here, we have to buy it again. If we want to buy it again, we have to buy it at the current price, which is 17.5. Remember, we need, available is 300, but we only need 200 square meters. So 200 multiplied by the 17.5, which is the current replacement cost. So 3,500 would be the answer here. Next we have wood. Wood is also regularly used. It means the replacement cost. However, the company's current supplier's delivery time for the wood is 3 weeks, and we need to do this in how much time? Let's see, 2 weeks. We need it in 2 weeks, so the supplier will not be able to deliver on time. An alternative, so that means we have to go for alternative. An alternative supplier could deliver immediately, but they would charge 8.50 per square meter. That is what the price we need. High Life Co. already has 500 inventory, but 480 of this is needed to complete other existing customer order in next 2 weeks. The remaining 20 square meters is not going to be needed until 4 weeks. So we have 520 of that is not needed right now, so we could use that, and 30 extra needs to be purchased from this alternative supplier. So 30 at 8.50 and this 20 at the normal price, which is 8.20. So 50 multiplied by, sorry, 30 multiplied by 8.20 plus no, it is the other way. 30 multiplied by the new price, because we don't have it from the alternative supplier, and 20 multiplied by 8.20. So we have 164 cost of wood. Sorry, 419. I didn't click on equal. Okay, let's move forward. What cost should be included in quotation for skilled labor and semi-skilled labor to nearest dollar? Skilled labor force is employed under permanent contracts of employment under which they must be paid for 40 hours per week's labor, irrelevant even if their time is idle due to absence of orders. Their rate of pay is 16 per hour. Although any overtime is paid at time and a half, in the next 2 weeks there is spare capacity of 150 hours. So how much time do we need? As skill hours, we need 200 hours. 150 spare capacity, that would be zero cost, but that 50 has to be taken over time. So that means 50 multiplied by 16, which is the normal rate, multiplied by 1.5. So 1200 would be the relevant cost of skilled labor. Next, semi-skilled labor. There is no spare capacity for semi-skilled labor. They are currently paid 12 per hour or time and a half for overtime. However, a local agency can provide additional semi-skilled workers for 14 per hour. So in this case, we will look at whether 12 multiplied by 1.50 is higher or this 14 is higher, because 12 multiplied by 1.50 is higher. We would go with the cheaper alternative, which in this case is the 14 offered by the alternative supplier, so we will go with that. So we need semi-skilled 300 hours multiplied by 14, which is 4200. Next, what is the cost which should be included in quotation for factory overheads? Of the 30 per hour factory overheads cost, 3 per hour, sorry, 1.5 per hour reflects the electricity cost of running the cutting machine, which will be used to cut the fabric and wood for the sofas. The other 1.50 per hour reflects the cost of factory supervisor's salary, irrelevant. Remember, fixed costs apportioned or irrelevant. The supervisor is paid an annual salary and is also paid 15 hours for every overtime he works. The supervisor will need to work 20 hours overtime if the order is accepted. So this 20 hours is relevant, but the normal salary is irrelevant. So 15 per hour for any overtime. So 20 multiplied by 15, that would become 300, which is relevant, plus the 1.5 per hour multiplied by 500 hours, 750 plus 300, I believe, yeah, 300, yes, becomes 1050. Okay, so this one, factory overheads, and they ask about factory overheads. Remember, we have general fixed overheads as well here. Which statement correctly describes treatment of general fixed overheads when preparing the quotation? The overheads should be excluded because they are sunk costs. The overheads should be excluded because they are not incremental costs. The overheads should be included because they relate to production costs. The overheads should be included because all expenses should be recovered. When we are preparing a quotation, normally when we are preparing a relevant cost, we should only include the costs that are incremental. Incremental means additional cost, and when we have fixed cost, they're not usually incremental costs. But if we have incremental fixed cost, then that would be included. So they should not be included in the cost because they are not incremental costs. They are incurred anyway. Which 4 of the following statements about relevant costing are correct? An opportunity cost will always be relevant cost if it is a past cost, even if it is past cost. Remember, the costs that relate to the past are called sunk cost, and sunk costs are not usually relevant. As he said, which of the following is true? This is not true. Fixed costs are always general in nature and therefore never relevant. No, incremental or relevant. Committed costs are never considered to be relevant. Yes. An opportunity cost represents the cost of best alternative forgone. Yes. Remember choosing one alternative or another one. Notional costs are always relevant as they make no. Estimate more realistic. A variable cost would be saved if an activity did not happen and are so relevant. Yes. Common costs are only relevant if the viability of the whole process is being assessed. Let's read the next one. Differential costs in make or buy decisions are not considered to be relevant. No, they are considered to be relevant. Differential costs are the incremental costs of making or buying. Common costs, so then common costs would be correct. Common costs are relevant if the whole process is being evaluated. If we want to evaluate the whole process, then we look at the common cost. Otherwise, for example, if we're looking at a further processing decision, we only look at the incremental cost, not the common cost. If we want to evaluate the whole process of all units being made, then maybe common cost will be relevant. Otherwise, if we are looking at further processing decision, then common costs would have already been incurred, so they would not be relevant. Okay, let's look at section C now. Remember, there are 2 questions in section C, each worth 20 marks, so total 40 marks. And there will be subsection in these 20 marks questions, so you will not have a whole question worth 20 marks. There will be subsections, each section worth a specified number of marks. So mostly it will be divided into theoretical and numerical part. So the theoretical part would be straightforward. So you are required to give answer to what is required, but remember a detailed answer, which means you need to show you are working. Answer only is not accepted here. In the previous section, we only had to calculate the answer. It didn't matter how we calculated that, but in this section, what matters is how we calculate the answer, which means we have to show our working. And then you have the theoretical part, where you have to give explanation. In theoretical part, there is no one right answer. The right answer depends on your calculation and comments relating to that calculation. And obviously, there could be many things that you could say. Important thing is saying a few things, maybe doing 70%, 80% here, because you're not going to 100% get marks in the theoretical section. Okay, let's see. So you'll be given a big question and then requirement here on the left, right, and then sub requirements. If it is more numerical, you will be given a spreadsheet. If it is more theoretical, you will be given a word. Like in this next requirement, we have more theoretical, so we have a word. But like always, we will focus on one thing at a time. So the requirement is calculate the following for the month of November, showing all workings clearly the sales price variance and sales volume contribution variance, material price planning variance and material price operational variance, labor rate variance and labor rate efficiency variance. In the next question, the requirement is explain the reason why CARETCO would be interested in material price planning variance and material price operational variance. So let's answer the first requirement. CARETCO is an electronics company which makes two types of televisions, plasma TVs and LCD TVs. It operates within a highly competitive market and is constantly under pressure to reduce prices. CARETCO operates a standard costing system and performs detailed variance analysis of both products on a monthly basis. Extract from the management information for the month of November are shown below. We have total number of units made and sold, material price variance and labor variance. The budgeted total sales volume for TVs was 1180 units, consisting an equal mix of plasma screen TVs and LCD TVs. An actual sales volume was 750 plasma TVs and 650 LCD TVs. Standard sales prices are 350 per unit for the plasma TVs and 300 per unit for LCD TVs. The actual sales prices achieved during the November was 330 per unit for plasma TV and 290 per unit for LCD TVs. The standard contribution for plasma TVs and LCD TVs are 190 and 180 per unit respectively. The sole reason for this variance was an increase in the purchase price of one of its key component, X. Each plasma TV made and each LCD TV made requires 1 unit of component X, which CARETCO standard cost is 60 per unit. Due to shortage of components in the marketplace, the market price for November went up to 85 per unit for X. CARETCO actually paid 80 per unit for it. Each plasma TV uses 2 standard hours of labor and each LCD TV uses 1.50 standard hours of labor. The standard cost for labor is 14 per hour, and this also reflects the actual cost per labor hour for the company's permanent staff. In November, the company also had to use temporary labor at the higher cost of 18 per hour. The total capacity of CARETCO's permanent workforce is 2,200 hours per production per month, assuming full efficiency. In the month of November, the workforce were wholly efficient, taking exactly 2 hours to complete each plasma TV and exactly 1.50 hours to produce each LCD TV. The total labor variance therefore relates solely to temporary workforce who took twice as long as the permanent workforce to complete their production. Okay, requirement is calculate the following for the month of November, showing all workings clearly: the sales price variance and sales volume contribution variance. Price, remember, whether selling the products cheap or expensive, and then contribution, whether selling more or less units. And then we have price planning variance and operational variance. We have to divide it in 2 parts, the change because of the planning and the change because of the operation, and then labor rate variance and labor efficiency variance. Now in computer-based exam, remember, you don't have to spend a lot of time on planning because you can always change your question, because you can add or remove things with ease. So my recommendation is just start answering the question. Anything that comes to your mind, you can adjust it later. So don't spend too much time on planning. So once you start answering the question, everything will come to your mind. Even if it comes later, there's no problem, you can adjust it. Okay, so we have section A. And first we have sales price and volume variance. So remember, sales price variance basically means what is the price at which we should have sold the units and what is the actual price for which we have sold. So we will only focus on sales here. So focus on one thing at a time. You will not be able to get all the information at once. So only focus on what is required. So we only have to compare the standard price versus actual price. That would be our price variance. So let's see how much sales we made. So extract from the management information for the month of November are shown below. Total number of units made and sold, material price variance, and total labor variance. We have sold 1400 units. The budgeted sales was 1180 units, consistent with equal mix. So this is actual, we don't care about that. Actual sales volume was 750 for plasma TVs and 650 for LCD TVs. So what I will do is I will write it separately. What I like to do is I like to write budget on the top. So we have plasma TV and LCD TVs. So we sold 750 of these and 650 of these. According to standard price, they should have been sold at the standard contribution for, okay, we need price. The actual sales prices achieved during November were 330 per unit for plasma and 229 per unit for LCD. Even though that is budgeted information, because I saw it and I got it, I don't have to first enter the budgeted information. I could directly enter the actual information as well. So we have 750 that we sold for, achieve was 330, and this one we sold for 290. I'm going to leave it open. That is also one of the things. If you leave it open, then you know what you have done, and once you have calculated everything, once you're happy with your answer, then you can put equal sign, it will calculate it. So this is our actual price. Standard prices are given at 350 and 300. So we have 350 here and 300 here. Let's see if there is any change in the budgeted price. Increase in price of material. No, we don't have any change in price, I believe. So I believe this should be the answer. So top is the total revenue we should have made from selling the units. Remember, previously in paper-based exam, you had to show you working separately other than your main calculation. But here it's not important. Putting figures in the cell as well is considered as working. So examiner will open the cell and he can look at what you have written in the cell. So showing your working means don't directly write figures from your calculator. First do the calculation in cell. So we should have sold it for 457,500, but we actually sold it for 436,000. And you can see from the budget that we had budgeted price of 350 where we sold it for 330, so it would be adverse. Now we have budgeted price of 300 and we sold it for 290. So obviously from per unit as well, you know that we have adverse variance. So if we minus, we have 21,500 adverse variance. It is good to show adverse variance as minus, but it is not important. You have to mention with adverse with it even if you write it as minus. But it is good to have the adverse variance as minus. So one thing is done. Now we have to find sales volume contribution variance. Remember, some of the data I can use from here. Like this actual sales. Remember, what is sales volume variance? It is comparing budgeted sales with actual sales. So actual sales is actually given here. I could use this data in calculation here. So right here, sales volume contribution variance. Remember, sales volume contribution variance means we are using marginal costing, and we have to calculate the difference of units. We have to calculate the difference of units by contribution. by multiplying by contribution. Sales volume contribution variance. If it were absorption costing, we would have used profit. Then it would be called sales volume profit variance. Okay, so we have actual data given, but remember, these are actual units multiplied by the sales price. We don't use sales price, we use contribution. Which contribution? Actual contribution or standard contribution? Remember, we use standard contribution. We don't use actual contribution, whatever the actual contribution might be. Because if we use actual contribution, then we will be calculating price variance like twice. It will be double counting. So when we talk about volume, we only talk about volume. When we talk about price, we only talk about price. So here I'm going to use the standard contribution. The standard contribution for plasma TVs and LCD TVs are 190 and 180 per unit respectively. Okay, so standard contribution is 190 and 180. Now I have to compare this with the actual, the budget. Plasma and LCD. Always try to write the information in the order that it is given. Like if plasma is given first, so I will write plasma first. If LCD is given first, I will write LCD first, because then you will get confused. You will use information of one thing with another thing. So always write in the order it is given. So the budget was given as 180 units and okay, 180 units consisting of equal mix of plasma and LCDs. So equal mix, which means multiply by 1, divide by 2, or directly divide by half. And we are going to multiply by contribution. Another way you could calculate it is find units and then find the difference of units, just multiply both of them by contribution. So whichever way works best for you. Adding it together. We have 218,300. So as you can see, we actually sold it, sold more units than budgeted. That's why our standard contribution is favorable. Favorable volume variance. Remember, volume variance, sales volume variance and sales price variance are related. If your price variance is usually adverse, your volume variance would be favorable, because when you sell something expensive, it would mean it is adverse variance. Then it will be sold, if we sell something expensive, then in price it would be favorable. Then because the price is higher, people will usually buy less, so your volume would be adverse. But if your price is lower, the price would be adverse. That would mean you are selling it cheaper, then your volume is expected to be favorable. So it would make sense if the price is variable, if the price is adverse, volume to be favorable. If price is favorable, volume to be adverse. Okay, next. The material price planning variance and material price operational variance. Remember, both of them are price, but one is when we take the price variance and we divide it into two parts, it becomes planning or operational. Remember, planning is when you compare original budget with revised budget, and operational is when you compare revised budget with actual performance. So we need three things here: original budget, revised budget, and actual. So this is number 2. Material price variance. So overall it is price variance, is just divided into two parts. So we have original budget and revised budget and then actual. Okay. So we are only talking about price. We remember when we talk about price, we talk about the material purchase. So how much material did we purchase? Let's see. Each plasma TV uses labor hour. So we are talking about material, so I don't think we have information of material here. The sole reason for variance was an increase in the purchase price of its key component X. Each plasma TV made and each LCD TV made requires one unit of component X, for which Caratco's standard cost is 60 per unit. So that means that seems original price. Due to shortage of components in the market price for November went up to 85 per unit for X. Caratco actually paid 80 per unit. So I'll write here in bracket, this is our original price, this is our revised price, and then our actual price. So let's look at plasma, LCD, because both of them use different quantity of material. We have actual material. When actual is not given, when actual quantity is not given, we consider standard quantity to be actual quantity. So because actual quantity is not given, just information is given that how much is needed for which unit, we would assume that the original quantity is the actual quantity used. So each plasma TV uses one unit of component X. Both of them require one component of X. Each plasma TV made and each LCD TV made requires one unit of component X. Okay, both of them require one. So how many units did we sell? Budgeted total sales for, okay, and actual sales during November were 33. Sorry. Standard contribution for plasma, where were actual units? Okay, the actual sales was 750, which you actually have here. Yeah, we have that information here. So I'm going to just remove the price. Okay, so remember, the units don't change. The only thing that changes is the price. And also the easiest thing would be, one thing I could do is multiply both of them by the usage, but they use the same quantity, which is 1. I don't even have to multiply by 1, but it is still good to multiply by 1. Then the examiner would know that you understand the calculation. So I would multiply by 1 even though it's not required. And I'm going to use this in all of them, the revise and everything. Okay, now take that, multiply by the original price, take that, multiply by the revised price, and take that, multiply by the actual price. Okay, so units are same, the only thing that changes is price. So revised budget is higher, you can clearly see, so it would be adverse variance. So material adverse, material price variance. And the actual is less, so we have adverse, favorable, material price, operational. This is operational. and the top is planning. So original budget versus revised budget gives you planning variance, and then revised budget versus actual gives you operational variance. And when we add it together, we don't have to, but still, for extra information, you can add both of them together, and we have adverse total material price variance. Or you could do it like this. If you take the top and minus the bottom, should give you the same result. So this was not required, this was just extra information. Now let's focus on the labor rate and labor efficiency variance. Remember, labor rate is comparing original rate with the revised rate, original rate with the actual rate, and then efficiency, original usage with actual usage. Okay, remember, material price and labor rate are very similar. So we could use budget and actual performance, even though it is revised budget, and I will change it later. We could use this format. I'm not 100% sure because I have to look at the question, but maybe I can use that information. Okay, each plasma TV uses 2 standard hours of labor, and each LCD TV uses 15. Yeah, I can use that format. The standard cost for labor is 14 per hour, and this also reflects the actual cost per labor hour for the company's permanent staff in November. However, because of the increases in sales and production volumes in November, the company also had to use temporary labor at the higher cost of 18 per hour. The total capacity of Caratco's permanent workforce is 2,200 hours production per month. Assuming full efficiency in the month of November, the workforce were wholly efficient, taking exactly 2 hours to complete each plasma TV and exactly 1.5 hours to produce each LCD TV. The total labor variance therefore relates solely to temporary workforce who took twice as long as permanent workforce to complete their production. So we are calculating price variance, labor price variance. So we have the TVs that we could use, and we write here budget and actual. Okay, so each TV uses standard 2 hours. Remember, we need standard usage, actual usage, because when we are calculating price, we look at actual labor hours, not budgeted. The standard cost for labor is 14 per hour, and this also reflects the actual cost per labor hour for the company's permanent staff in November. However, because of the increase in the sales and production volumes in November, the company also had to use temporary labor at the higher cost of 18 per hour. The total capacity of Caratco's permanent workforce is 2,200 hours production per month. Assuming full efficiency in the month of November, the workforce were wholly efficient, taking exactly 2 hours to complete each plasma TV and exactly 1.5 hours to produce each LCD TV. The following labor variance therefore relates solely to temporary workforce who took twice as long as the permanent workforce to complete their production. So they said here that the variance, the total labor variance therefore relates solely to the temporary workforce who took twice as long as the permanent workforce to complete their production. So they're talking about this variance, total labor variance. It said it is because of only because of the temporary workforce taking longer than standard. Okay, let's answer it. So to find rate, we calculate the standard rate multiply by actual rate standard rate minus the actual rate. The difference will be rate variance. Now remember, as it was said here in the bottom, that the rate variance, the variance at the top, total labor variance, relates solely to the temporary workforce. It means that the rate variance will also relate to the temporary workforce. It means that our standard time is 14 and the temporary workforce take 18. So that difference of 4 only relates to temporary workforce, and we don't have any other variance relating to our existing staff. And also the efficiency variance relates to the temporary workforce. So we have to see how much extra time do we need from the temporary workforce to find the variance. So if we look at the time it would be taken, we have 2 hours here and 1.5 here, because they said 2 hours per unit would be needed here and 1.5 hours per unit would be needed here. And if we look at the total time that we have available, is 2200 hours. So that means we have 275 extra hours needed. But as the temporary employees take twice time, we will multiply this by 2, which will be 550. So we will do the same thing in the bottom, because we are calculating rate. There is no difference in hours. So the only difference is the rate. So multiply this by, according to standard, it would have been 14, and this would have because it's actual is 18. Multiply by 18. The difference is what is variance. So adverse price variance. Okay, remember we need 275 extra hours, and that is done in 2 hours by the permanent staff, this because they take twice as much. Yeah, temporary at higher cost. Let's see where it was mentioned. Like movement for the list to solely okay first. Standard cost of 15 reflects actual hour because of the sales demand. The used temporary soft total capacity per unit. To make full efficiency demand November, fully efficient, taking exactly 2 hours to complete unit and 2 units. The total labor is therefore less solely to temporary workers who took twice as long. Yeah, here, twice as long. So total hours multiplied by the rate. So we found the total time taken by the temporary workforce multiplied by the rate. So that gives us difference. Next we have volume variance, efficiency variance. Efficiency variance is simply 275 time efficiency, labor efficiency, is simply the standard time, which is 275, and actual time, which is multiplied by 2, which is 550. So we can directly multiply by the rate. Now which rate should we use? The actual rate or the revised rate? Remember, we use actual, the original rate, no matter whatever the actual rate is, because we have already considered that in price variance. $275 multiplied by 14. So why is this figure hard? Okay, yeah, I've linked it to that. So 500 multiplied by 14, so 275 multiplied by 2, which becomes 500, and then minus, so I want it to be negative because it's higher, so So we have 3850 adverse, efficiency, variance. Okay. And then once you've calculated your figures, you could just do a little bit titling and stuff, make it a little bit clean so that you could get full marks. Let's look at the next requirements. Okay, explain the reasons why CARET-Co would be interested in material price planning variance and material price operational variance. Remember, in theoretical question, there is no exact answer. So whatever comes in your mind, spend time on it. Whatever you feel is right, just try your best to get as much marks as possible. So they're asking, explain why CARET-Co would be interested. Remember, every theoretical information, theoretical explanation you are giving, you have to link it to the question. But even though examiner says that you have to link it to the question, but some information will be general. So you give general explanation of the thing, and then maybe link it to the question if it is linkable. So they're asking why the company would be interested in material price planning variance and material price operational variance. So the good thing is to divide these marks into parts. Like we have material 9 marks, so I would divide it into 4 and 4 marks, and then 1 mark maybe giving a general explanation. So we have material price and planning variance. Material price planning and operational variance. If you're not sure, always use titles. I'm going to generally explain this. This is comparing original price with revised price. It represents variance related to management, which is management and planning, which is not in control of the operational stuff. What it simply means is that management were not accurate with planning. This is comparing. Remember, you could just write and then later on correct it. This is comparing original revised price with actual price. It represents various related to operational level, which is in control. This is comparing revised price with the actual price. It represents variance related to operational level, which is in control of operational stuff. What it simply means is that operational stuff were not or operational staff did not perform well. In case of Caratco, looking at the information, remember it was material price, yeah? Yes. So price was 35,000 adverse, and you remember the reason was where was it written? Material market shortages. The material price planning variance was 35,000 adverse, which means that management were not accurate in planning the variance, which helps understand that operational staff is not responsible for this. The changes in the market were not predicted by strategic level, or whichever is by management, or say management involved in planning. Material price operational variance material price operational variance is $7,000 favorable. $7,000 favorable, which means that material is purchased at lower price than the market price. Looking at the breakdown of variance, we can see that operational level has actually performed better than budget. This information would not have been visible if we had not divided the variance into operational into planning and operational. The total price variance is 28,000 adverse. It would seem that operational variance were adverse. But it would seem that operational staff were not economical, which is not true. Okay, so then you can look at it first, write whatever you want to see, and then check it later on, and then maybe make adjustment and make it as nice as you can make it. Let's look at another question. Okay, let's look at another question. So again, there are two parts here. In part A, we have 14 marks, and requirement is assess the financial performance of TIP using information given above, and assess quality of the service which TIP provides to its customer using table 1 and any other relevant data, and indicate the risks it is likely to face if it continues its current business. So we need to look at the risk here, comparing the ratios and the new information that is given here. Thatcher International Park is a theme park and has for many years been a successful business, which has traded profitably, and about 3 years ago the directors decided to capitalize on their success and reduce the expenditure made on new thrill rides, reduce routine maintenance where possible, deciding instead to repair equipment when it broke down, and made a commitment to regularly increase admission prices. Once an admission price is paid, customer can use any of the facilities and rides for free. These steps increase profit considerably, enabling good dividends to be paid to the owners and bonuses to the directors. The last 2 years of financial results are shown below. So we have sales, expenses, wages, maintenance, repairs, directors, salaries and bonuses, other expenses, net profit, book value of assets at start of the year, dividend paid, number of visitors. TIP operates in a country where the average rate of inflation is around 1% per annum. Okay, we have 14 marks. If it is possible, try to divide this mark into headings or into points that you're going to explain. That way it would be easier for you to know whether you have explained enough or not, and it will be easier maybe for the examiner as well to mark it. So if we give 7 points, 2 marks, about 2-3 sentences, I believe that should be enough. Obviously, supporting that with calculation would definitely get us mark. If not 100%, maybe 90%. We are not aiming for 100%, remember. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so I'm going to make some headings. One would be, let's say, sales. We can talk about sales. What else? We can talk about the wages, maintenance. So I'll write all of them, and then I will see what is easier for me to comment on. So let's write all of them and then see whether comments are easier. There are more points, yeah, so the more it is, the better it is. The easier for us would be to choose between them. So other costs, net profit, book value of assets, okay, let's focus on one thing at a time. So we can remember, you don't have to give one perfect comment at the start on one point. You could just comment on all of them and then review it, and then maybe make some changes, because initially maybe your comment doesn't sound very related to the scenario. Okay, we have sales. Sales, as you can see, have increased. They are 4,250,000, and if we look at inflation here, they're 1%. So if they increase because of general inflation, that doesn't mean that our performance is good. It would be just because of external factors. If they change because of other than that inflation, then that would mean we have performed well. So if we include inflation with it, which would make it 101%, the amount will go through 5 to 50,000 multiplied by 101%. That would make it 5,302 to 5,000. Okay, but our sales are 5,320,000. So our comment would be sales have increased by 20,000 more than they should have, considering the general rate of inflation. So initial thought is that sales have improved. Okay, maybe something else comes to our mind and we change our opinion, but for now we believe that maybe they have increased. I've done this calculation here. Once I do calculation and everything, I can write it here, leave it there, but it would not seem very nice. What I can do is, in the bottom I could write workings and then put this figure here. Okay, maybe giving a subtitle as well. Next we have wages. They are 205,000 and 200,000. 220,000. So that means 250,000 minus 220,000, 30,000. If we want to convert that to a percentage, 30,000 divided by 250,000, that would suggest 12% decrease. Wages have decreased by 12%, which would seem like a good thing. But the downside is is that maybe staff level has been decreased, affecting quality of the service. Okay, so cost reduction is not always correct. We have to see and see if there is any information given here which we missed. Maybe 3 years ago decided reduce maintenance where possible and made a comment to regulating the prices once. Okay, nothing mentioned here. Maintenance 80,000 minus 70,000, 10,000 decrease. So 10,000 divided by 80,000 becomes about 12.5% decrease. The decrease in maintenance cost (12.5%) decrease in maintenance cost, and it has been replaced with repairs, which was mentioned there. Yeah, so we increase the repair cost. If something is broken, we will repair it, we will not maintain it, and the repair costs have increased here, you can see. If we look at this one, repairs, then maybe we can comment on it better. So let's look at this one as well. $260,000 minus $320,000. We have $60,000 increase, which is 60,000 divided by 260,000, about 23%. Okay, the maintenance, the repairs cost have increased by 23%. The result is because we don't do regular maintenance. The cost, and it hasn't saved us. We have reduced regular maintenance, where we have reduced the cost, but the reduction in maintenance cost is less than the increase in repairs cost. So now I'm thinking we should comment on repairs and maintenance together. Yeah, let's write it here. That way it makes more sense. So there is 12.5% decrease in maintenance cost that has been replaced with repairs. The repairs costs have increased by 23%. The result is because we don't do regular maintenance, where we have reduced the cost, but we have reduced the cost of maintenance But reduction in maintenance cost is less than the increase in repairs cost. Simple as that. Director salaries, 150,000. Remember, there's another point as well, that if we don't do regular maintenance, it would mean that our machines will be breaking down a lot, which would mean maybe our customers get hurt. But that is not the financial part. We will talk about that in the next section, I believe. This is where they ask about the risks. Yeah. So one point to have in mind is this one. So in fact, I can write it here. I can write that point here. Okay, guys, I tried to answer this question multiple times, but I always face some problem. Maybe connection-wise, maybe website is busy sometime. So you get the idea of how you would approach this question, yeah? So try to practice. Means write your answer. Don't just look at answers here. Always write your own answers. So here just mention the performance, and then we saw there were many problems, risks. Maintenance were not being done, the prices were increased, the waiting time is there. So all of that we could mention in the next part. So this is it. Hope it helps.